A religion that never believed in God. An organization that promised salvation but delivered silence. How does a fake faith turn into one of the most powerful criminal networks on earth? What happens when devotion becomes control, and control becomes a weapon? In the early 1950s, a charismatic American writer named L. Ron Hubbard founded something he called Dianetics, a system of mental therapy. Within 3 years, he transformed it into the Church of Scientology, registering it as a religion in New Jersey in 1953. What began as self-help lectures in rented halls grew into a global organization with billions in assets, celebrity followers, and accusations that stretched across decades and continents. This isn't just a story about belief. It's about how a structure designed to look like faith became a machine for money, power, and control. And it's about the people who tried to escape, and the system that wouldn't let them. L. Ron Hubbard was a science fiction writer struggling with debt when he published Dianetics, The Modern Science of Mental Health in 1950. The book promised readers they could unlock hidden memories and cure psychological problems without doctors or drugs. It sold well. Hubbard began holding seminars, charging fees for auditing sessions where followers would confess personal secrets while holding 2 metal cans connected to a device called an e-meter. By 1953, Hubbard had rebranded his movement as a religion. The Church of Scientology was born, and with it came tax exemptions, legal protections, and a new kind of authority. Members paid for courses that promised spiritual advancement through levels called operating the 10 states. The higher you climbed, the more you paid. The more you paid, the more secrets you learned, and the more leverage the organization held over you. In the 1960s, Hubbard took his operation to sea. He formed the Sea Organization, a paramilitary wing of Scientology where members signed billion-year contracts and lived aboard a fleet of ships. These recruits wore naval uniforms, followed strict hierarchies, and worked grueling hours for little or no pay. Hubbard called them his most dedicated followers. Former members would later call it forced labor. By the 1970s, Scientology had expanded into dozens of countries. But governments started asking questions. In 1977, FBI agents raided Scientology offices in Los Angeles and Washington, D.C., uncovering Operation Snow White, the largest infiltration of the U.S. government in history. Scientology operatives had stolen documents, planted bugs, and framed critics in an effort to remove negative records from federal agencies. 11 top Scientology officials, including Hubbard's wife Mary Sue, were convicted of conspiracy. Hubbard went into hiding. He lived in a motorhome, moving between secret locations, communicating only through written orders. He died in 1986, leaving behind a fractured organization and a man named David Miscavige, who would seize control and reshape Scientology into something even more insular and aggressive. Under Miscavige's leadership, Scientology doubled down on secrecy and intimidation. The organization created the Office of Special Affairs, a division tasked with silencing critics through lawsuits, surveillance, and public smear campaigns. Former members reported being followed, having their phones tapped, and facing coordinated online attacks designed to destroy their reputations. In the 1990s, Scientology won a landmark victory. After years of litigation, the IRS granted the church tax-exempt status in 1993. The decision remains controversial. Critics argue the church used intimidation and attrition, filing thousands of lawsuits against individual IRS officials until the agency capitulated. Scientology officials called it a triumph of religious freedom. With tax exemption secured, the church's wealth exploded. Real estate holdings multiplied. Celebrity recruitment intensified. By the 2000s, Scientology owned grand buildings in major cities, operated elaborate media production facilities, and maintained a public relations apparatus that rivaled multinational corporations. But beneath the polished surface, stories began to leak. Former members spoke of disconnection, a policy requiring Scientologists to cut all contact with anyone the church labeled suppressive, including family members. They described the Rehabilitation Project Force, or RPF, a program where members accused of infractions were sent to isolated facilities for months or years of hard labor, sleep deprivation, and confessional interrogation. In 2015, the documentary Going Clear aired on HBO, compiling years of testimonies and documents. The film detailed allegations of physical abuse, forced abortions among Sea Org members, and a culture where questioning leadership was treated as betrayal. Scientology responded with a massive PR counteroffensive, launching websites attacking the credibility of every person interviewed. The pattern repeated across borders. In France, Scientology faced fraud convictions. In Germany, the government refused to recognize it as a religion, classifying it instead as a business. In Australia, inquiries documented coercive practices. Yet the organization endured, protected in the United States by religious freedom laws and an army of lawyers. The evidence against Scientology comes in layers. Court documents provide the hardest foundation. The 1979 convictions in Operation Snow White are public record, with sentencing memos and declassified FBI files available through the Freedom of Information Act. Testimonies from former members form the second layer. Hundreds of people have come forward over decades, many using their real names and faces, risking retaliation to tell their stories. Their accounts show consistent patterns: isolation from outside contact, financial exploitation through endless course fees, and psychological pressure to remain silent. Internal documents have also surfaced, including policy letters written by Hubbard himself outlining fair game doctrine, a directive that declared enemies of Scientology may be tricked, sued, lied to, or destroyed. While the church claims this policy was rescinded, former members and investigative journalists report its tactics continue under different names. Financial records tell another story. Scientology operates as a tax-exempt religious organization in the U.S., yet court filings and investigative reports estimate its global assets in the billions. Real estate alone includes hundreds of properties, many purchased in cash. Former finance officers allege aggressive fundraising tactics, where members were pressured to donate beyond their means or take out loans to pay for mandatory services. The church denies all allegations of abuse, fraud, and coercion. Scientology representatives maintain that former members are lying for profit or revenge, that media coverage is biased, and that the organization is a legitimate religion unfairly targeted by bigotry. They point to humanitarian programs, drug education campaigns, and disaster relief efforts as evidence of positive impact. Not everyone agrees on what Scientology truly is. Legal definitions vary wildly by country. In the United States, it is a recognized religion with full constitutional protections. In Germany, it is monitored as a potential threat to democratic order. In France, it has been convicted of organized fraud. The inconsistency reflects deeper questions about where belief ends and exploitation begins. Some scholars argue that all new religious movements face unfair scrutiny during their early years, and that Scientology's practices, while unusual, do not fundamentally differ from older faiths that also demand obedience, donations, and separation from non-believers. Others counter that scale and intent matter, that Scientology's documented history of espionage, intimidation, and litigation sets it apart. There are also gaps in what can be proven. Many allegations come from testimony rather than physical evidence. The church's internal operations remain opaque, and most active members refuse to speak publicly. Without access to current financial records, membership numbers, or internal communications, independent verification is difficult. The organization's aggressive legal strategy has also chilled investigative journalism, with news outlets facing years-long lawsuits over critical coverage. Some former members have recanted their stories, though critics note these reversals often occur after legal pressure or reconciliation with the church. The truth is rarely clean in cases involving closed organizations, charismatic authority, and decades of conflicting narratives. Behind the legal battles and financial empires are people. Families torn apart by disconnection policies describe years without contact with children, parents, or siblings. One mother recounted not being allowed to attend her daughter's wedding. A father described his son refusing to acknowledge him on the street, eyes forward, following orders. Young people raised inside Scientology's Sea organization report childhoods spent working instead of attending school, often in conditions that violated labor laws. They describe being punished for minor infractions, confined to rooms, or sent to remote facilities where communication with the outside world was forbidden. Many left in their 20s with no formal education, no job skills, and no support network. For those who left, the aftermath often brought financial ruin, social isolation, and psychological trauma. The church's practice of keeping detailed files on members, known as ethics folders, meant that personal confessions made during auditing could later be weaponized. Some ex-members reported having their deepest secrets leaked online or sent to employers. Others faced harassment campaigns that lasted years. There are also those who remain committed believers, who credit Scientology with saving their lives, giving them purpose, and providing community. Their voices are part of the story too, a reminder that human experience is complex and that organizations can mean radically different things to different people. Think of Scientology as a machine with 3 gears: belief, money, and fear. The belief gear draws people in, offering answers to life's hardest questions. The money gear keeps the machine running, converting spiritual seeking into cash flow through endless courses and donations. The fear gear prevents people from leaving, using social pressure, information control, and reputational threats to maintain loyalty.